Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Ches, Daf 98 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, Daf 98, we basically continue speaking about these halachis of gerim, people who convert to Judaism, and what's considered the status of the siblings in terms of yibum, chalitza, can they marry each other's spouses? So, exciting stuff. Friends, let us jump in over here. We are on Daf Tzadi Ches, about 10 lines into the page. It says, Toshma. Coming to Amr Reb Yossi, says Reb Yossi, Maise bin Niftoyim Ager. There's a story with Niftoyim, the proselyte. Shenosa Eishes Ochiv, that he married his brother's wife. Me'imo, from the same mother. Okay. Uva Maise lefnei Chachamim, and the Maisa came before the rabbis, and they said, "Ein ishus leger." There's no marriage for a ger. Ger dikodesh achinam tafsi bakdish. Wanted me that there's no marriage for a ger. What if a convert betrothed is a woman? She's not betrothed. What does that mean? Haleima ein iser eishes och leger. No, so it means that there's no iser of eishes och when they're a convert. My lab denaz va'ach kishu ger. And let's say that this is talking about that they got married after converting. So we see that it's a support for Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. As you saw yesterday, that Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says that when you have these siblings who convert, they can marry each other's spouses. And here we see that Niftoyim married the spouse of his brother after they converted. The Gemara says no. It's talking about where the brother got married when they were still in Ovid Kochavnu. But then what's the Chiddush over here? What's the Chiddush over here? When we say, well, I might have the Havina to say that, maybe it also shouldn't be allowed when they got married before they converted, since if they got married after they converted, we could argue that it would be a problem to marry each other's spouses. So therefore it's saying that it's not, so we don't make that gezerah, and since they got married before he converted, so it's okay. We don't make that gezerah. Okay. Tashma Kamanir Amar Ben Yasyon, says Ben Yasyon, Shalachti Lekarchi Ayom, that when I went to travel and see the world, Matzasi Ger Echad, I found a certain proselyte, Shenosa Eishes Achiv, who married the wife of his brother, Me'imo, from the same mother. Amartil, I said to him, B'ni mi harshcha, who said that you're allowed to marry your brother from the same mother? The wife of your brother from the same mother. Amr, he said to me, Hare Isha v'shiva bonea al safsels Isha v'shiva bonea. He says, look, we have over here a woman with her 7 sons, and they all did the same thing. They all married each other's spouses, and it was right, they converted and they married each other's spouses, and it's totally cool. Al safsels Yoshev Rabbi Akiva ve'Omar. On this bench, Rabbi Akiva sat, and Itaka said, Shnei Dvarim, 2 things. Gernose Eishes Achiv Me'imo. One is that a proselyte can marry the wife of his brother from his mother. Ve'omar, and secondly, Rabbi Akiva said, Vayidvar Hashem al Yena Shenis. It's a drash on a pasuk in Yena, in Sefer Yena, where it says that the word of God was to Yena a second time. Shenis dibra imo shchinas shlishis la dibra imo. That the Eibishter spoke with Yonah twice, but not 3 times. Lo dibra imo shchina. Fine. Katani miyaz ger no say eishes ochiv me imo. So we see that apparently a convert is allowed to marry the wife of his brother from his mother. My lab denos va'ochiv kshu ger. And we're talking about where his brother got married when he was already converted. No, they got married before he converted to Judaism. But then what's the Chiddush? May have thought, well, I may have thought to say that we would even forbid it when they got married when he was a Gentile, since it would be a problem, arguably, if they got married when, in terms of being able to marry the brother's wife, if they got married when he had already converted. So arguably, I would say, therefore, maybe we should also make the gezerah even in a situation where they got married before conversion. Kamash Milan, that we don't make such a gezerah. But 1 second. Would we really say that, would we really trust this opinion of Rabbi Akiva to say that you'd be able to marry the wife of the brother, this convert to be able to marry the wife of his brother? That if you have a Torah scholar who teaches a halacha, look, if before, if he had already quoted this teaching before there was a practical need for it, so shomalo, then we can listen to it. But if not, we don't listen to it. Meaning, if we have this question, right? You have this proselyte, he married his brother's wife, and now we're trying to figure out what's what. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes an opinion of Rabbi Akiva, apparently, allegedly, that says that it's allowed. So we say, look, if this was an opinion of Rabbi Akiva that was known, that we already knew from advance, okay, so we can rely upon it. If all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this random opinion of Rabbi Akiva who supposedly said that they're allowed to marry each other, then it's suspicious. So we say, well, if you want, I could say that, well, it wasn't a random opinion of Rabbi Akiva. It actually is something that they had spoken about before. Or you could say, well, he was bringing a proof from it wasn't making up out of nowhere, right? There were other examples of where this was allowed, such as this woman and her 7 children that he mentioned. Or you could say that it's not a random opinion of Rabbi Akiva because he quoted 2 opinions of Rabbi Akiva. It wasn't just this one thing out of nowhere. He was saying Rabbi Akiva came, he taught 2 things, not just this, but also the drasha about Yonah. So therefore it makes it more trustworthy, more reliable. Okay. So now talking about that drasha about Yonah. It says that the word of God was to Yonah a second time, Lamor saying, that the Eibishter spoke with Yonah a second time, but not a third time. But 1 second, the pasuk says, by Yeravam ben Yoash, it says, Yisrael, that he returned the boundary, the border of Israel, Milvochamos, Aryam Harava, Kidvar Hashem Shadiber Biad Abdu Yonah ben Amitai. Like the word of God that he spoke in the name of his servant Jonah ben Amitai. What's Amitai in English? Hanavi, the prophet. Amar Ravina al Iske Ninveh Ka'amar. So 1 second. So meaning, how can we say that the Eibusha only spoke with Yonah twice? Apparently there was this time as well. So it says Ravina al Iske Ninveh Ka'amar, that when the pasuk says that God only spoke to Yonah twice, it means regarding Ninveh. But about other things he spoke with Yonah. Rav Nachum Beitzol Ka'amar says Rav Nachum Beitzol Kachi Ka'amar. This is how you understand the pasuk. Kidvar Hashem Shadiber Biad Avdo Yonah ben Amitai Anovi, that when it says like the word of God to Yonah, Kishem Shenepach Leninveh Meira Letova Kach Bimei Yeravam ben Yoash Nepach Loem Niso Meira Letova. No, it's not saying that literally God spoke to Jonah another time. No, what it's saying is that just like with Yonah, he was able to turn around the people of Nineveh from evil to good, so also during the days of Yeravam ben Yoash, he was able to turn around the Yidden from evil to good. Tashma, come in here. Gersha haya leidasu b'kedusha, v'arasu shlo b'kedusha. If you have a proselyte who was born when his mother had already converted to Judaism, but he was conceived prior to that, prior to the conversion. Yesh lo she'er ha'em, ve'ein lo she'er ha'av. So he has relatives of the mother, but he does not have relatives of the father. Ketzah, what does that mean? Nosa achoso min ha'em, if he marries his sister from his mother, yotzi, that's not allowed. They can't stay together. Mina of yikaim, but his sister from his father would be okay. Achos ha'av mina em, his father's sister who they share a mother, yotzi, they cannot stay together. Mina of, but his father's sister who they share a father, yikaim, that can be okay. Achos ha'em mina em, his mother's sister who they share a mother, yotzi, they cannot stay together. Mina of, but if it's his mother's sister who they share a father, Reb Meir Omer Yotzi, Reb Meir says they cannot stay together. Chacham Omer Yikaim, the Chacham say that they can stay together. Hayu Reb Meir Omer, because Reb Meir would say Kol Erva Shimishum Shera Aim Yotzi, that any erva that is connected to your mother is not allowed. So therefore, your mother's sister, even if it's from the same father, not necessarily the same mother, that would not be allowed. Mishum ha'av yikayim. But if if it's an erva from the father, then it's okay. Umutter be'eshes achiv, but he will be permitted to the wife of his brother. Skip the next word. Uve'eshes achi aviv, and the wife of the brother of his father. Ushar kol arayos mutaros lo, and all of the other arayos are also permitted. Lisuye eshes ha'av, to include his father's wife. Nosa isha uvita, if he marries a woman and her daughter, kones achas umotzi achas, he can keep one and he has to get rid of the other. Lichatchila lo yichnos, but lichatchila he cannot marry them. Mesa ishto, if his wife dies, mutar b'chamosu, he's allowed to marry his mother-in-law. Okay, v'ikadetani, that those who say also b'chamosu, he's not allowed to marry his mother-in-law. Katani mias mutar be'eshes achiv. No, so okay, there was a lot of stuff there, but one of the stuff in there, there's a lot of bunch of stuff in there. One of the lot of bunch of stuff was that he's permitted to marry his brother's wife. So there you see, my lad knows v'achiv kshu ger. And Mistam we're talking about where his brother married this woman after they converted. So we see that converts are allowed to marry each other's spouses, like Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Lo denozvu kshu ovid kochav. No, the brother got married pre-conversion. But then what's the chiddush? Kamash may have thought to make a gzeira of when they get married when he was pre-conversion as a concern for when they get married post-conversion. We say no, we don't make such a gzeira. Amar, we said earlier, Nasa isha ovita konis achas motzi achas. We said earlier that if this proselyte marries a woman and her daughter, so he can keep one and he has to get rid of the other, and he can't marry both. 1 second, if we're saying that they're not allowed to stay together, obviously then they can't get married. So hasum kaino, it's talking about a different part of the brisa. This is what it means. That these earlier examples, right, I mean, where the rabbi said yikayim, for example, if you marry your mother's sister who shares a father, the rabbi said you can keep it, you can stay together, but still, you should not marry her. Mesa ishto mutar b'chamoso. Okay, if his wife dies, he'd be allowed to marry his mother-in-law. Vikadutani also b'chamoso. Though those who say that he would not be allowed to marry his mother-in-law. So chadak Rabbi Yishmael v'chadak Rabbi Akiva. That's like the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva that we saw recently. Manda asuk Rabbi Yishmael, the one who says that if his wife dies, he's not allowed to marry his mother-in-law. That's like Rabbi Yishmael, the Amar Chamosu Lachar Misa Isura Kaima, who says that even after your wife dies, your mother-in-law is asur. V'gabe ger gazu be'arbanon, and by a ger, by a convert, we make a gzera. Mandashari ki Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Chamosu Lachar Misa kolash le'isura. And the one who says it's permitted, he says like Rabbi Akiva, right? That's like Rabbi Akiva, who says that if your wife dies, so then if you marry your mother-in-law, you don't get sreifa, so it's more lenient, even though it might not be permitted. But by a convert who doesn't have these kinds of relatives, so then the rabbis did not make a gezerah. Well, I think we'll stop here. That was the Tzadi Ches of Masechta Yevamos. We continued discussing kind of the machlokas between Rav Acha, we kind of the opinion, machlokas between Rav Acha bar Yaakov and Rav Sheshes about can converts marry the spouses of their brothers. So we tried to bring some proofs, and but we didn't necessarily succeed per se. That was that, and we're going to start tomorrow with a new Mishnah. Friends, that was the Tzadi Ches of Masechta Yevamos. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.